What kind of person smashes a car's mirror in broad daylight, in a neighborhood dripping with wealth, and thinks they'll walk away unscathed? Karen Miller, that's who. She stormed down Oakwood Lane, her heavy footsteps echoing like a drumbeat of rage, her face twisted in a scowl that could curdle milk. The morning sun glinted off the polished Bentleys and Teslas lining the street, each one a silent testament to the affluence of this gated community. Karen, in her oversized floral dress, didn't belong here, not in spirit. Anyway, she was a tenant in a modest rental at the edge of the district, a sore thumb among the manicured lawns and marble fountains. But today, she wasn't just out of place. She was out for blood. It started with a parking dispute. Karen's beat-up minivan had been towed the night before, relegated to an impound lot because she'd parked it in a reserved spot belonging to Dr. Elias Grant, a soft-spoken surgeon who lived in the sleek modern mansion at the corner. Elias had politely asked her to move it days ago, but Karen didn't take kindly to requests or reason. She'd screamed at him, her voice carrying across the cul-de-sac, calling him an entitled snob who thought he owned the street. Elias, ever calm, had simply called the HOA and the tow truck did the rest. Now, Karen was on a warpath, her fury a living thing, coiled and ready to strike. She stopped in front of Elias's Bentley, its midnight blue paint gleaming like liquid sapphire. Her eyes locked on the side mirror, a sleek piece of engineering worth more than her monthly rent. Without a second thought, she swung her purse stuffed with who knows what and smashed it against the mirror. The crack was sharp, like a gunshot, and the mirror dangled, then fell, shattering on the pavement. A gasp rippled through the small crowd that had gathered. Two neighbors, a jogger frozen mid-stride, and a security guard already reaching for his radio. Karen didn't care. She turned, her face a mask of defiance, and shouted, "That's what you get, you rich prick." Elias wasn't even there. He was in surgery, saving a life, oblivious to the chaos unfolding outside his home. But the security cameras weren't. Mounted on every lamppost, their lenses caught every angle of Karen's outburst, the swing, the shatter, the venom in her voice. She didn't notice them, or maybe she didn't care. In her mind, she was the victim, the underdog striking back against a world that dared to inconvenience her. She stormed off, leaving the broken mirror glinting in the sunlight, a small but costly casualty of her rage. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. The HOA president, Mrs. Clara Wentworth, a no-nonsense woman with a penchant for order, had already reviewed the footage. She called Elias, who was still in scrubs, and informed him of the vandalism. Elias sighed, not out of anger but exhaustion. He didn't want a feud, but he also wasn't about to let this slide. "File a report," he told Clara. "Let the police handle it." The security guard, a young man named Javier, had already sent the footage to the local precinct. Karen, oblivious to the storm brewing, was back in her apartment, ranting to her sister over the phone about the injustice of her towed car. The police knocked on her door that afternoon. Karen's face went from smug to ashen as Officer Daniels, a calm but imposing man, presented her with stills from the security footage. "Ma'am, we have you on camera vandalizing Dr. Grant's vehicle," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Karen sputtered, her voice climbing an octave. "That's not me. You're framing me. This is a conspiracy." But the evidence was undeniable. Her face, her purse, her unmistakable floral dress, all frozen in high-definition clarity. She was escorted to the station, still shouting about her rights, while the neighbors watched from their windows, whispering about the woman who thought she could outrun the truth. What Karen didn't know was that this wasn't just about a broken mirror. Elias, though kind, was meticulous. He kept records of every interaction with Karen, her shouting matches, her complaints about noisy lawnmowers, her refusal to follow community rules. The HOA had a file on her, too, thick with documented violations. This wasn't her first outburst, but it was her boldest. And now, with the cameras as silent witnesses, it was the one that would undo her. The truth, cold and unyielding, was closing in, and Karen's world was about to get a lot smaller. The twist came quietly, almost unnoticed. Among the neighbors watching that morning was Lila, a shy college student who worked part-time as a barista. Lila had seen Karen before, not just in the neighborhood but at the cafe where she worked. Karen had berated her for a wrong order, calling her incompetent in front of a line of customers. Lila hadn't forgotten the humiliation, and now, seeing Karen's meltdown, she felt a spark of courage. She'd recorded the incident on her phone, not just the mirror smashing but Karen's tirade afterward, where she'd bragged about teaching them all a lesson. Lila hesitated, then sent the video to Clara, who forwarded it to the police. It wasn't just the cameras now. Karen's own words were a noose tightening around her. By evening, social media was alight with whispers of the incident. Someone had leaked Lila's video, and it spread like wildfire across local forums. Karen, unaware, was still spinning her narrative of victimhood, but the court of public opinion was already turning. The footage didn't just show her crime. It showed her character arrogant, unrepentant, a woman who believed the rules didn't apply to her. The neighbors, once indifferent, now saw her as a liability, a ticking bomb in their pristine community. Elias, reviewing the video in his office, felt a pang of pity but also resolve. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. Karen's reckoning was coming, and it would be swift. The police had the footage, the HOA had the complaints, and Lila's video was the final nail. In a wealthy district where image was everything, Karen had painted herself as the villain, and the cameras had caught every stroke. The courtroom was a sterile cage of wood and fluorescent light, a far cry from the manicured lawns of Oakwood Lane. Karen sat at the defendant's table, her floral dress swapped for an ill-fitting blazer, her face a mix of defiance and dread. Across the room, Elias sat quietly, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Harper, laid out the case with surgical precision. Vandalism, destruction of property, and a pattern of disruptive behavior. The security footage played on a screen, Karen's purse swinging in slow motion, the mirror shattering like her own fragile ego. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the projector and Karen's heavy breathing. She tried to fight back. Her lawyer, a weary public defender named Mr. Tate, argued that the incident was a moment of passion, a reaction to the injustice of her towed car. Karen took the stand, her voice shrill as she spun a tale of persecution. "They're all against me," she cried, pointing at Elias, Clara, and even the judge. "These rich people think they can push me around because I'm not one of them." But her words fell flat. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair pulled tight, didn't flinch. The evidence was a mountain, and Karen's excuses were pebbles. Then came Lila's video, the twist that turned the tide. Ms. Harper played it without fanfare, letting Karen's own voice fill the courtroom. "I showed them," Karen had bragged in the clip, her tone gleeful as she recounted smashing the mirror. "They'll think twice before messing with me again." The jury, a mix of working class and affluent faces, shifted uncomfortably. Lila, sitting in the back, clutched her hands, her heart racing. She hadn't wanted to be here, but she'd come forward, driven by a quiet sense of justice. Karen's eyes locked on her, venomous, but Lila didn't look away. For the first time, she felt seen not as a barista, not as a bystander, but as someone who mattered. The confrontation peaked when Elias took the stand. He spoke calmly, his voice steady as he described the months of tension with Karen, her outbursts, her threats, her refusal to coexist. "I didn't want this," he said, looking at the jury. "I just wanted peace." Karen scoffed audibly, and the judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Ms. Miller, control yourself," she snapped. But Karen couldn't. She stood, shouting about conspiracies and elitism, until the bailiff escorted her back to her seat. The jury watched, their faces hardening. Karen wasn't just fighting Elias. She was fighting the truth, and it was a losing battle. The prosecution rested, and the room felt heavier, as if the air itself carried the weight of Karen's choices. Mr. Tate tried to salvage her case, calling character witnesses who barely knew her, a coworker who mumbled about her strong personality, a neighbor who admitted she'd been a nuisance, The HOA's file was presented, a litany of complaints. Loud parties, littering, verbal altercations. Karen's life, laid bare, was a pattern of chaos, and the jury saw it clearly. Outside the courtroom, the neighborhood was changing. The video had sparked debates online, not just about Karen but about privilege, accountability, and community. Some defended her, calling her a victim of classism, but most saw her for what she was. A bully who'd finally met her match. Clara, ever the pragmatist, used the incident to push for stricter HOA rules, while Elias quietly donated to a local charity, wanting no part of the spotlight. Lila, meanwhile, found herself the unexpected hero of the story, her courage a quiet ripple that inspired others to speak up. Karen's world was unraveling. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict. Vandalism carried a fine, but the judge, citing Karen's lack of remorse, added community service and a restraining order. She was to stay 500 feet from Elias's propertia logistical nightmare in their small community. Karen's face crumpled, not with regret but with fury, as she realized she'd lost more than a court case. Her reputation, her freedom, her place in the world, they were all slipping away. The fallout was immediate. Her landlord, citing the HOA's pressure, served her an eviction notice. The online backlash grew, with memes and hashtags branding her Bentley Karen. She tried to fight back, posting rants on social media, but they only fueled the fire. Friends distanced themselves, and her sister, once her confidant, stopped answering her calls. Karen was alone, her anger a flame that had consumed everything else. Yet in the midst of her collapse, there was a flicker of something else. Lila, watching from afar, felt a pang of empathy. She didn't hate Karen. She pitied her. In a quiet moment, she wrote an anonymous letter, slipping it under Karen's door. "You can change," it read. "It's not too late." Whether Karen read it, no one knew. But it was a gesture, a small act of grace in a story of retribution. The neighborhood settled back into its rhythm, but it wasn't the same. The cameras, once unnoticed, now felt like sentinels. Elias returned to his work, his life untouched by the drama. Clara tightened her grip on the HOA, and Lila, emboldened, applied for a scholarship, dreaming of a future beyond the coffee shop. Karen's fate was a warning, etched in the collective memory of Oakwood Lane. Actions have consequences, and the truth always catches up. Months passed, and Oakwood Lane seemed to heal, its polished surface hiding the scars of Karen's outburst. The Bentley's mirror was replaced, the pavement swept clean, but the story lingered, a cautionary tale whispered at block parties and book clubs. Karen was gone, her apartment now occupied by a quiet couple who waved at neighbors and followed the rules. But her absence wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning of something new, a chance for reflection and redemption, not just for her but for everyone touched by the chaos. Karen's community service was grueling. She spent weekends picking up trash along the highway, her floral dresses traded for an orange vest, her scowl deeper than ever. The other workers, a mix of petty offenders and volunteers, avoided her. She was still Karen, quick to snap, quick to blame. But the work, the monotony, the sheer weight of her sentence, began to chip away at her armor. One afternoon, under a blistering sun, she found Lila's letter in her purse, crumpled but intact. She read it, then stuffed it back, her jaw tight. Change? The word felt like an insult. Yet it lingered, a seed planted in barren soil. Elias, meanwhile, found himself reflecting on the incident. He'd won legally and morally, but the victory felt hollow. He hadn't wanted Karen's life to implode. He'd only wanted peace. At a community meeting, he proposed a mediation program for future disputes, a way to defuse tensions before they exploded. Clara, surprisingly, agreed, seeing it as a way to prevent another Bentley incident. The program became a small success, with neighbors learning to talk instead of fight, a legacy born from Karen's mistake. Lila's life changed most of all. Her courage in sharing the video had earned her respect, not just from the neighborhood but from herself. She enrolled in college, studying sociology, driven by a desire to understand why people like Karen lashed out and how they could heal. She volunteered at a community center, helping others find their voice, just as she had. Her quiet strength became a beacon, proof that even the smallest actions could shift the tide. Karen's journey was harder. Evicted and ostracized, she moved to a rundown apartment across town, her savings drained by fines and legal fees. The internet hadn't forgotten her. Bentley Karen was a meme that refused to die. But in the solitude of her new life, something shifted. She started attending a support group, dragged there by a coworker who saw her struggling. The group was a mix of people like her, angry, broken, desperate for a way out. At first, she sat silently, arms crossed, but the story-soft loss of regret, of second chances, began to crack her defenses. One night, she spoke. Her voice shook as she admitted her anger, her shame, the way she'd pushed everyone away. The group listened, not judging but understanding. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Karen didn't transform overnight, but she started therapy, took a job at a warehouse, and began to rebuild one painful step at a time. The letter from Lila, now taped to her fridge, became a reminder. It wasn't too late. The neighborhood, too, found a new rhythm. The mediation program grew, and disputes that once fueled shouting matches now ended in handshakes. Elias became a quiet advocate for community, speaking at local schools about empathy and accountability. Lila's scholarship came through, and she wrote a blog about her experience, not naming Karen but reflecting on the power of truth and forgiveness. The post went viral, not for drama but for hope, inspiring others to face their own conflicts with courage. Karen's story didn't end in triumph, but it ended in possibility. She wasn't a villain anymore, just a woman trying to be better. The cameras that had sealed her fate were now a distant memory, replaced by the slow, messy work of change. Oakwood Lane, with its gleaming cars and perfect lawns, carried on, but it was softer now, more human. The truth had torn things apart, but it had also built something NAWA community that learned, however painfully, that accountability could lead to grace. In the end, the story wasn't about a broken mirror or a courtroom battle. It was about people flawed, angry, hopeful, finding their way through the mess of life. Karen's rage had been a spark, but the fire it ignited burned away illusions, leaving room for truth, for growth, for a second chance. And in that quiet, hard-won space, the neighborhood, and Karen herself, found a way to move forward.